Mic check one. way. Well, it is 5 o'clock. At this time, we will call to order the March 14th, 2023 City Council meeting at 5 p.m. special City Council meeting. We do have a quorum, so could I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mendoza? Here. Vice Mayor Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Orlemans?
Here.
Councilmember Pearson?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. Okay, at this time, we will open public comments. Turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address City Council on items that are on the closed session agenda. If you're in person, please file a speaker card with the city clerk. If you're participating via Zoom, raise your hand. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted when the timer has expired. I received no written public comments on this item prior to the meeting. I do have one hand raised. I will call on Jan Schofield. Jan, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm calling in regards to item number 3, 1907 and 1909 Jane Way. I'm asking the city councilor and the mayor to please try and understand that at the time my family purchased the home on Kayla Place, Jane's Way dead ends into Kayla Place. These yellow roof foundation low income homes that you will be closed session discussing will be going behind my house and around my home. And when I purchased this, neither the person that I purchased the home for or the city when I called informed us that this property at 1907 and 1909 James Way was zoned for low income only. Had we had known this, we would have never, ever have purchased this property. Once again, when people dot their I's and cross their T's and we call and we do our homework to get everything done, we're not getting the full story. So I'm kind of upset about this project and I am completely against it. I believe that District 2 already holds a majority of Brentwood's low-income housing projects. I would like to ask the council members and the mayor to address where does the city stand on this measure that Jovita Mendoza has been working so hard on to put back into the city where we distribute properties or low-income housing and take it away from the state. I'm being told that if you don't go through with this, there's a good possibility the state's going to step in and we have more control if the city operates it. No, no. You guys are the city. You are the mayor, Ms. Bryant. Your responsibility is to step up and to make sure that your BP, your plan states that low-income properties are to be distributed equally in the city. I don't feel that's happening. The majority of these are in District 2. And I'd like to know from each council member and the mayor, why? Why are there so many of these projects around us? We already have a very large apartment complex and several houses that are on Section 8. And these people, it takes every penny they have just to pay their portion of the rent. Lots of them, most of them can't even afford their garbage, their water. I mean, this needs to stop. This needs to be equally distributed.
The speaker's timer had expired. I do have one additional hand raised. Cinziana Todor. Cinziana, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would also like to provide a couple of points on the negotiation of sale of 1907-1909 James Way. Yellow Roof Foundation, part of their board of directors, one of their members is the spouse of a former city employee who just finalized and finished his tenure with the city last week, just about a week ago. So that brings up a flag how this particular foundation was selected for this land sale negotiation. I would like you to really investigate this and look deeper into it, how this particular sale contract came about, if it's a contract already. Also, one of the sponsors of Yellow Roof Foundation is a local architectural firm, SDG Architects, who was involved in so many questionable requests and projects around the city, including Amber Lane Apartments, who were still seeing design issues with it, that are not up to city standards. So that's another flag. Also, I would like you to question how Mr. Ricardo Noguera was assigned to negotiate this, given his background and history with similar deals that went not so well in his tenure in Florida as well as Washington. So those are a couple of things that I would like you to really look into. Also, do we think we need more high-density affordable housing along Brentwood Boulevard? Why is the city moving away from their inclusionary affordable housing principle? How is the city expecting to meet the goals outlined in Brentwood's specific plan, such as equitable distribution of affordable housing and achieve in an effort to achieve and maintain an equitable distribution of housing for all economic groups throughout the city and now amongst our community? And also, a policy 3.2, part of the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, reads that we are striving to facilitate improvement within the eastern portion of the city as means of making the area more attractive for market racing of family development and encouraging further private economic investment in the area. So please, please, please pay very close attention to this deal and not get intimidated by the threats from Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional speaker cards and no additional hands are raised in Zoom.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will close public comments. And can I get a motion to recess to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We are recessed to closed session.
Test, test.
Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Test, test. Hello, hello, hello.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, we will reconvene the March 14th, 2023 City Council meeting at 7 o'clock. And there is nothing to report out from our closed session. And we do have a quorum. Could I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Orlemans?
Here.
Councilmember Pearson?
Present.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. And if you could join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we will open public comments. I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
We'll take public comment in the council chambers, followed by Zoom public comments. If you're in person, please file a speaker card with the city clerk. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand to speak under public comment. At this time, the public is permitted to address the city council on items that are not on the agenda. Items listed under presentations, informational reports are on the consent calendar. Requests for future agenda items, new request. Please save your request for any other items that are on the agenda for that part of the meeting. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I did receive one written public comment on this item that was submitted prior to the meeting on agenda item B9 from West Coast Home Builders. This has been posted on the city's website. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the city council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up with you directly. I do have one in-person speaker card, and then I have 3 hands raised. And I will start with Danny Dorman.
Good evening, everyone. Shay does not care about seniors. This is from the CDC. In part, humiliation or disrespect, verbal and nonverbal threats, harassment, and geographic or interpersonal isolation. Neglect is the failure to meet an older adult's basic needs. These needs include food, water, shelter, clothing, hygiene, and just your basic expectations at the sunset of your life. Shay does not care about seniors. I can go into Shay's practices of entrapping seniors. I found this out firsthand when my mother-in-law was trapped into silence. But that's not for today. Today, I want to talk specifically about Shay's unwillingness to install mailboxes for its existing residents. They are forcing seniors to either rely on family members to drive them to the post office to get their mail, or they are forced to do it themselves. Little known fact, I cannot pick up my mother-in-law's mail. So she's forced to go down to the post office to get her HOA bill. Forcing invalid people because Shay fails to meet a senior's basic needs. They do not care if their unwillingness to allow the USPS to bring mail to seniors. And it's not the other way around, despite the geographical isolation. How stomach-turning is that? I've discussed this with you in the past. Why I'm bringing it up today is the disturbing news that Shay has no intention of installing mailboxes until they sell their existing inventory. Now I'm going to freestyle. We're getting ready to do proclamations. Seems like we do proclamations every meeting. How about a proclamation protecting our seniors? How about that? How about finding ways to force Shay to do the right thing? If you can't do the right thing, what is the use of you? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker I have on Zoom is Ian Cohen. Mr. Cohen, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
First, I want to apologize if I sound awful. I'm recovering from COVID. That's why I'm not in person. But I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Youth Commission. So it's been a little while since we spoke to you guys, and I have a few things to tell you about. So we are very excited that next Tuesday, the 21st, from 5:30 to 7:30, is our Youth Commission Youth Experience Fair, hosted with the Brentwood Parks and Rec Department and the Heritage High School Business Club. We're going to have a ton of different jobs, internships, sports, Los Pedano, all kinds of different things available to youth at this fair. Again, it's next Tuesday from 5:30 to 7:30 at the community center. And also for those youth looking for jobs, our aquatics department is begging for lifeguards right now. We have multiple classes opening up, and then we're in the street. There's going to be a May class opening up soon with registration in April. That's just the word in the street. It'll be coming out soon. It's a great job to work. That's where I work in the summer. It's amazing. And April 8th, here's something we're very excited for. Our multicultural rally is going to be April 8th from 1:30 to 4 p.m. in City Park. And then if this sounds interesting to everyone, not just the events, but to parents who have teens, if you want your kids involved in some of these amazing events, our application is open till April 20th on our city website. Just go to brentwoodca.gov, go to government, boards and commissions, and then to vacancies, and all of the information is there. And then any seniors or parents to high school seniors listening, college admissions are coming out. I hope you guys go to the colleges you want, and Berkeley's coming out soon, and I hope we have a bunch of kids going to Berkeley. College is not cheap. So the Youth Commission has a scholarship to help with that. We're offering scholarships of $1,500, $1,000, $500, and $250. The application is due in 3 days. So you kind of need to hurry up if you want to get in for this scholarship. But these are some amazing scholarships, and the $1,500 one is helped by the Pell Board because they gave us a nice donation to the Youth Commission this year. So again, the two biggest things is the Youth Commission events on the 21st and the 8th, and then our application is open until April 20th, and the scholarship's due in 3 days. Have a great night, Council, and sorry again if I sound horrible.
Thank you. The next speaker is Cinziana Todor. Cinziana, go ahead.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, City Council, for the opportunity to speak. I would like to speak on a topic of related to City of Brentwood ethics and conduct policy. And and this is really posed even with the threat of and the risk of being sued and called more names and put down in front of the whole city by Councilmember Pearson. This is what I have to say. Conduct with the public, part of the City of Brentwood ethics and conduct policy says, in public meetings, making the public feel welcome is an important part of the democratic process. No signs of partiality, prejudice, or disrespect should be evident on the part of individual council members towards an individual participating in a public forum. Every effort should be made to be fair and impartial in listening to public testimony. 1, be welcoming to speakers and treat them with respect. Members of the public were welcomed, and I'm using air quotes, with eye rolls and threatened repeatedly by council member and her family with lawsuits. Number 2, be fair and equitable. In allocating public hearing time to individual speakers, she proved over and over to be a bully because she continues to squash what people have to say to keep us in line. Obviously, she's completely out of touch on this item amongst many others. What she does not know is that people in Brentwood will continue to showing up and speaking up regardless of her threats. Luckily, she has no saying in changing the code of conduct. I say this because she made it very clear she is not open to hear any opinions from the public unless if it's her personal agenda. Be an active listener. She does not excel at this. She kept talking over fellow council members, prompting them to do the same to defend the point they were trying to get across. On top of that, she took extra time when not appropriate to tell Mr. Mayor how hurt she was that he called the meeting back to order in the middle of her inappropriate argument. Avoid personal attacks of any kind. At last city council meeting, she kept attacking the council members, colleagues throughout the meeting without any concrete contribution. She provided only word salad. She created a new nickname for herself, copy-paste Pearson. All I'm asking for you tonight is that Vice Mayor and Mayor, you bring this issue as an agenda item and propose to investigate a sanction or a punishment for this council member for her ethics.
The speaker's timer has expired. The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca. Carolina, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, City Council. I called in on February 14th, and I let you guys know that there's a big field behind Pioneer that at that point in time had weeds almost as tall as me. Now, I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'3", and the weeds were about 5 feet tall. So it's been a month. The weeds are now taller than me. At that point in time, nothing happened. So I called at the next city council, said the same thing, and I received an email from Tim Ogden, who said to me that he had talked to the fire chief, who said that they would take care of it during weed abatement season. Now, I'm going to say again, this is behind a school. In the school, there are kids with asthma. And also the school is surrounded by multi-generational families, senior citizens who also have breathing issues. So I was hoping to get, some resolution relatively quickly. So today is March 14th. A few days ago, I finally heard, I opened a ticket is basically what happened, because nothing happened. And I know rain happened, but we did have a dry spell there where equipment could have be put in there. Now you need big equipment because this has taken so long to take care of. And nothing happened. So I opened a ticket. I heard from a very nice gentleman who said they now need to wait for the ground to dry so they can get the equipment in there. So between the time I called on February 14th and now, March 14th, 30 days, nothing has happened other than people in the neighborhood are now taking pictures of the weeds because they are so tall. There are critters now living in the weeds because they are so tall, and it rained again. So we're going to have to wait another week or two. And this is extremely disappointing because I called a month ago. And, I'm hoping that in the future, when residents call, that the people who need to make things happen listen to what the residents are saying, and not just be like, oh, well, we'll take care of it whenever. Weed abatement season is I don't know how many months out, and that's unacceptable. I drive by that every single day. So when I call in and say, hey, it's taller than me, I'm expecting more proactive action to take place by the city manager. Not, well, I called the chief and he said he'd take care of it whenever. That is an unacceptable answer. I was going to call the chief, but then I asked him, what is city code for weed? And all of a sudden, oh, we have an idea, but now I had to open a ticket. It's been 30 days. So that's highly disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ann. Ann, go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. I appreciate each and every one of you. I wanted to take a moment to say one thing in pursuant to the caller prior to the last caller. I have been attending every meeting, and I am appalled at what I've just heard regarding the attack against Council Pearson. She in no form has ever conducted herself in any manner that has never been beyond being professional. I wanted to remind everyone that council members are elected officials directly by the people, and they should be allowed to do their job pursuant to the oath that they have taken. They have taken an oath and should be allowed to do their duties and their responsibility to oversee the functions of the city, identify all the needs of the city. Now, each elected member have taken their time out to be here, away from their family, away from things that are just as important as making certain that the city is running in the official manner. Now, this is not a forum to bring a tax upon the council members, nor is it time in a nursery school. So I want everyone to realize that. With that being said, let them reflect that. This is a very serious forum to bring matters that are related to something that is of substance and not a forum to attack personal people. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised. I do have one more speaker card, but it's for the proclamation on item C1 from Mariana, and I believe she was going to speak during the proclamation.
Thank you. Mariana, if you would like, after the proclamation, we'll call you up and have you speak at that time. Thank you so much. At this time, then, we will close public comments, and we will move into informational reports from council members, committees, liaisons, and staff. And I believe I started to my left last time. We'll start with Council Member Mendoza tonight.
Hello. Since the last time we met, I attended the League of California Cities Latino Caucus Board of Directors meeting, the California Alliance for Local Electeds. We had 2 meetings. And the last meeting, we actually reviewed the Huntington Beach lawsuit against the state in federal court for all of our housing bills that they're pushing through. Attended the ag meeting. We'll watch the ag meeting. Attended the soccer complex meeting, attended our Neighborhood Voices leadership team meetings. That was about 4 of those. The Our Neighborhood Voices Wednesday informational meeting, Our Neighborhood Voices HOA house party information for residents. If anyone wants a house party, let me know. The Downtown Brentwood Coalition general meeting, the California Housing Future 2040, the next regional housing needs allocation kickoff webinar, the soccer park design workshop, and the last thing I'm going to mention is that Oakley is also having a meeting for their soccer complex. So based on all the feedback we got, I've been communicating with their city manager, and they are having a meeting for their sports park on March 29th at 7 p.m. I believe that's in the community center. So we had a lot of people outside Brentwood show up. So you're welcome to attend that one as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Pearson.
Yes. Since our last meeting, I had the opportunity to meet with members of the Brentwood Chamber to find out what their upcoming goals are. I attended the Downtown Brentwood Coalition General Meeting and did a one-to-one intensive with an organization that was hired by the Brentwood Unified School District to work on what topics they're going to, or what solutions they have for diversity, equity, and inclusion at our schools. Had a meeting, and then attended the sports complex workshop. Thank you.
Councilmember Orleman.
Since the last meeting, I was able to attend the Youth Commission meeting here in council. Pretty amazing watching those young guys up here. I attended the PAL Activities League board meeting. Their golf tournament is March 24th, in case anybody's looking for something to do with PAL. The Downtown General Coalition meeting for the Sand Creek Sports Complex. I attended the Network of Care fundraiser, which was sponsored by Contra Costa County Fire. Amazing event over in Pittsburgh. Got to spend some time with a lot of council members from all over the area that attended. It was nice. And then just a reminder, March 16th is Transit Employee Appreciation Day.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, I also attended California Alliance of Local Elected 2 meetings. I met with Assemblymember Tim Grayson and had a discussion about responsible housing bills. and the Conquered Naval Weapons Development. And he evidently pushed for the increased employment centers that were supposed to be, well, that will be built there. We discussed our neighborhood voices and the need for cities to insist to take back local control, some specific needs around Brentwood. Attended the sports complex community meeting, and I want to give a shout out to the students who came and advocated for what they wanted to see in that complex. The agricultural enterprise meeting, which included a discussion of Delta Informal Gardeners, a request to use part of the Nail property adjacent to the East Contra Costa Historical Society. And we also heard an update from Harvest Time to demonstrate usage of funds allocated in 2022. This will come to council so everyone can see what that looked like. Also attended the mayor's conference and saw a lot of different presentations. One of them was from Sam Cagill, who was the East Bay representative for Cal Cities. She was talking about some of the legislation that Cal Cities is supporting. So in turn, I requested letters of support for 2 bills with Tim, and he said that since they'd already been approved by Cal Cities, those would be able to move forward, but I'm mentioning them here now. One of them is AB 1708 Maritsuchi, would reverse organized retail theft trend by reforming Proposition 47 to increase accountability for serial theft and encourage responsive intervention programs that divert people away from both crime and prison. And the other one is AB 817 Pacheco. Pending amendments would allow non-decision-making legislative bodies currently governed by the Brown Act, such as advisory bodies and commissions, to participate in 2-way virtual teleconferencing without posting their physical location. This is actually to address the barriers faced by individuals with disabilities being able to serve on these boards due to physical limitations that make it them unable to go to a site for the meeting. So it's basically about inclusivity and making sure people are represented. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I had a call with Supervisor Burgess' office regarding some concerns of some of our local residents. And as usual, they are so responsive to all the needs of their families and our community. So I want to thank them. I also attended the Delta Association of Realtors and got to give an update on some of the events and things that are happening in our community. And I attended the Agricultural Enterprise Committee as well. And the Vice Mayor has already filled us in on what happened there. Attended the Mayor's Conference. I also spoke with Assembly Member Grayson regarding local control and providing tools from a state level to cities to help offset the cost of reasonable development so that houses can cost less by design so that our families can actually afford them. And it was a fairly positive conversation with very little culmination of results, but it's not the last time I'm going to talk to them about that. Also, I attended the Habitat Conservancy meeting, as well as the Sports Complex meeting and workshop. And today I met with Mayor Aaron Meadows of Oakley. Mayor Meadows and I are working with the other mayors in East County, Pittsburgh Mayor, Antioch Mayor, and the 2 of us to work together for regional economic development and partnerships on things that we can work together in our communities with our young people, our elderly community as well, our seniors community, as well as the members of our community that are underserved, so that we can potentially have a larger voice at a state level for bringing resources to those components of our community. And the louder our voice is together as a region, the more interest we will have economically, as well as potentially bringing resources and finances to help our most needy people in our community and families. And I have nothing further to report at this time. So we will move into the consent calendar. I would like to pull item B1. Is there any other items to be pulled, or do I have a motion for the consent calendar?
A motion to adopt consent calendar except for item B1.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous. So item B1 is a proclamation proclaiming February 24th, 2023 as the Day of Ukrainian Solidarity. And I know that we have several representatives and families in our community here this evening. So if you would like, those that would like to speak, if you can come up to the podium, I will also meet you there. And who would like to receive, Margaret, who are we going to have receive?
I believe we have Valentina and Sophia to receive the proclamation, and we also have some members online that wanted to say a few words. So I'll go ahead and promote them to a panelist as well.
Wonderful. If you can just come right up here and so that the cameras can get you, we want to make sure that everyone is able to see you, and I will read the proclamation. Whereas Ukraine proclaimed independence from the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics on August 24, 1991, adopted its constitution in 1996, and has been a fully independent country and home to 44 million citizens led by a president elected by overwhelming popular vote. And whereas the 24th of February 2023 marked the one-year anniversary of the Russian Federation's and Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion and occupation of Ukraine, and whereas the Kremlin as aggressor has committed gross violations of human rights and war crimes against the Ukrainian people, and whereas the city of Brentwood has previously taken action in solidarity with the democratic nation state and peaceful people of the Ukraine on April 26, 2022, and whereas the city of Brentwood's support for the democratic nation state and people of Ukraine remains fast, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize February 24th, 2023 as Day of Ukrainian Solidarity, and ask the residents of Brentwood to join us in expressing support and solidarity for the people of Ukraine in defeating and expelling this unprovoked aggression against their country and their duly elected government, and encourage the residents of Brentwood to seek out reputable organizations to donate and assist the Ukrainian people, dated this 14th day of March 2023. And that is on behalf of the Brentwood City Council and the City of Brentwood.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And if you could just speak into this microphone as...
Well, I want to thank City Council for honoring the people of Ukraine with a gesture of support, regardless of one's politics, of view of the war. Anyone can agree on the terrible suffering and hardship the average civilian in Ukraine is enduring, men, women, elderly, and children alike. The bombs don't discriminate. I talk to relatives daily and hear about the devastation happening right in the town I grew up at, where I played with my friends, where I went to school and celebrated holidays with my relatives and family and friends. This is heartbreak I never imagined and that I will go through in my life. Seeing support coming from friends and community such as this from Brentwood City Council, let us remember that humanity and friendship still exist in the world. Just knowing of your thoughts and prayers bring us more hope and gives us strength as we await peace. Thank you so much. Thank you from all the people in Ukraine. We really appreciate it. And as I told Javita, my family always calls, when we talk, they always ask me what we are doing in support. And when they're seeing us going to demonstration, coming to events like that, seeing support from people from other countries, they feel better, they feel more brave, and they still need it. You know, a lot of people forgetting about this war, but for them it's very real. Thank you so much for thinking about them. They really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this great opportunity to talk to you. And this is not the first proclamation. I do remember 1 year ago, me super emotional, overreacting, as mostly being me, I contacted you, I joined the Zoom meeting, and in several weeks I received the first one proclamation in support in my country, and why it matters. I came here tonight to say thank you, and I would like to tell you why it matters. Because this printed physical copy, paper copy of this proclamation, it went with me and my husband at least 25 times, because we are attending and organizing charity events supporting like Ukraine collecting donations and talking to people, like spreading awareness and all the stuff. And hundreds of people, they saw this proclamation. We even printed like a huge one because it's easier to read, and it was like hanging in our stand. And each time, believe me, people, when they like see this nice golden stamp and like the signature of the mayor, and yes, Brentwood is not like a huge city yet, but when they see this, when they keep this piece of paper, then like, oh my God, this is so nice. And believe me, it does matter because this year for all Ukrainians, it's 1 year of pain, of tears. Sometimes we lose hope. Many of us, we have insomnia and a lot of like psychological problems. But when we see that you still care, we can go on. So thank you. And without your support, without support of regular people, people like you, my family, and my friends in Ukraine, they would be murdered like thousands of my compatriots. So I came tonight to say thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, anyone that would like to have a picture with our council members, or and I think for video purposes, we need to be over here. Is that correct? Oh, we can see here. Oh, so we need, so everyone online can see us over here, so that we can face this this camera up on the wall right over here. Oh, I can see it. Yes. Oh. Well, let me just do one with the mayor first, and I'll come by. At this time, we do still have a couple of individuals that would like to speak that are on Zoom. Margaret, I'll let you introduce them.
They are both promoted to panelists. We have Igor and Natalia, and they could go ahead and speak.
Thank you so much, Mayor and members of the Brentwood City Council. My name is Ihor Tregub. I live in Berkeley. worked at the Livermore Lab for a number of years with several of your constituents. But the reason I'm here is I'm a native of Kiev, Ukraine. I wanted to introduce you to some of the other folks that are here. And actually, it looks like Yarema Kuzishin from the Ukraine advocacy nonprofit Hromada also runs the only Ukrainian paper in town, is in panelist view or in attendee view. And if it might be possible to promote him as well, that would be great. I just, from the bottom of my heart, wanted to say in my native tongue, "Дякую," which means thank you. Every proclamation that is passed, and I'm joining you by Zoom because just moments ago we received a proclamation from the city of Union City in Alameda County as well. So this is the 5th and 6th respective local jurisdiction in the Bay Area to pass this proclamation of support, standing in solidarity, continued solidarity with the democratic, indivisible nation of Ukraine, and in support of its peace-loving people courageously fighting on the front lines for self-determination. Every one of these proclamations, while symbolic, is so meaningful, as you have already heard. The Consul General is collecting all of them, and they have a direct line to, of course, to the Ukrainian government, and really appreciate all of your support. I believe that every show of support gets us closer to victory. Victory of the power of democracy over the forces of despotism. Victory over the ability to self-determine one's government over the dark forces of fiefdom and suppression. Every day, one day longer, one day stronger, one day closer towards victory, until peace will prevail over this beautiful land. And right now, of course, while thousands of miles away, Ukrainians are fighting for the ability of the entire world to be able to enjoy their freedoms. So again, thank you so much. I did want to share that there is a fundraiser that several of us have been working on, and we have exceeded our goal, but we are still going. And I wanted to invite you to contribute this. The funds go directly towards several nonprofits on the ground through Hromada, a 501c3, so contributions are tax deductible, and 100% of them go where it's needed most for relief, including physical and psychological rehabilitation, food, medicine, everything that is needed the most. The link is bit.ly, bit.ly/rebuilding Ukraine. Please do feel free to share this information with your constituents. Again, дякую, which means thank you, and Slava Ukraini. And I will pass the mic over to Natalia or anyone else who wishes to speak.
Thank you, Igor. Just very briefly, dear council members of Brentwood, I'm very grateful that you are proclaiming you are doing this proclamation today. My name is Natalia Ushilik, and I'm this is my second year in Bay Area. I'm accidental expat here. I'm Ukrainian, and right now I'm a lecturer at UC Berkeley. And I just wanted to say that it's definitely the most important thing for Ukrainians on the ground in Ukraine is that That's the fight for democracy, and definitely everyone understands it. But for Ukrainians, not in Ukraine, like some of us here, the most important thing is to understand that other people, Americans here in particular, understand our fight and support us. And this meetings like this and meeting people like you gives us strength, gives us courage to continue the fight and to pass on this support to our friends, family, to other Ukrainians in Ukraine. So thank you once again. And it was a pleasure being here, though online.
Were we able to hear from the doctor?
We did try to promote, but they didn't accept the.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, thank you so very much for your participation. And we really appreciate you spending time with us this evening. And as you've heard, the city of Brentwood and our residents are fully in support of the people of Ukraine. So thank you so much. At this time, I move approval for item B1.
Motion to approve item B1.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, it is unanimous. We will move into public hearings. Item C1, a review and possible approval of an amendment to the general plan to update the housing element for the 2023 through 2031 sixth cycle. And I'll turn it to staff.
Thank you, Mayor and Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight's presentation is going to be presented by our partners in this housing element effort from Kimley Horn. Ines Galmish is going to be promoted. She is on Zoom with us tonight and will be giving staff's presentation. And then staff and Kimley Horn, as well as outside counsel, will be available afterwards for any comments or concerns and to address any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let me just share my screen. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tonight, we are pleased to present you with the final draft housing elements, which incorporates the comments and recommendations you have provided us throughout this process, as well as revisions following HCD's review of the draft housing elements. The purpose of tonight's agenda item is to review and consider an amendment to the general plan to update the housing element for the 2023 to 2031 sixth cycle as required by California state law. Staff recommendation is to adopt a resolution approving the amendment to the general plan to update the housing element. Since the start of the update process over a year ago, the city has conducted extensive community outreach, including 9 public workshops, outreach events, surveys, hearings before the Planning Commission and City Council, and advertising for these engagement opportunities included notices in utility bills, flyers, social media posts, newspaper and newsletter adverts, email blasts, and updates to the project website. On August 25th, 2022, the city published the draft housing elements for a required 30-day public review period. On October 17th, 2022, the city submitted the draft to HCD for its first 90-day review period and received initial comments back on January 13th, 2023, excuse me. A matrix of these comments has been addressed and is included as Appendix 1A in tonight's staff report. On February 14th, 2023, staff presented HCD comments to the City Council and requested initial direction on proposed changes to the goals and policies section of this draft. If City Council does not request any changes tonight and the housing element is adopted as recommended by staff, the adopted housing element can be resubmitted at the end of business day, Thursday, for a 60-day review. Once the review is complete in May, HCD will either find the housing element in compliance with state housing laws and provide the city with certification, or provide further comments. If comments are received, staff may make non-substantive changes to the housing element as required to make it internally consistent, as well as address any non-substantive changes or amendments requested by HCD to achieve a finding of conformance with state law. Council would need to re-adopt the housing element if any substantial comments or changes were received. As a reminder, the city could face a number of consequences if it does not have an adopted and certified housing element. Some of these consequences include builder's remedy applications, ineligibility for various funds, HCD enforcement actions, and lawsuits from third-party organizations. We'd like to note that 2 SB 330 preliminary applications were submitted today at 4 p.m. And that are believed to be builder's remedy applications. As such, staff recommends moving forward with the adoption ahead of HCD certification. As part of the adoption, or what we're calling self-certification, the city will be required to adopt findings in which the city finds that the housing element update is in substantial compliance with housing state law. So with that said, we'll now get into the components of the housing element and provide a brief overview of the revisions that were made following HCD's comments. As mentioned before, a matrix of the comments is provided as attachment 1A in the staff report with detailed responses as to how each have been addressed. HCD's comment letter received on January 13th this year included 60 total comments, 47 of which can be described as minor and 15 as major. Minor comments do not require any new policies or programs and can be addressed through additional requested documentation and minor revisions or clarifications. Major comments require new or substantial revised programs. The minor comments primarily affect portions of the Section 2 community profile, Section 3 housing constraints, resources, and fair housing, and Appendix B candidate sites analysis. The major comments relate to the goals, policies, objectives, and actions contained in the Section 4 housing plan. The housing element is made up of 4 main sections and 4 supplemental appendices, as you are familiar with by now. In the next few slides, we'll walk through the purpose of each section and the information you'll find in each. Within Section 2, the community profile, this section provides a baseline assessment of housing needs based on data primarily gathered from the U.S. Census. The section assesses population and household characteristics and seeks to identify potential gaps with the city's housing stock and affordability levels. An important aspect of this section is the identification of special housing needs groups in the city and whether the housing stock adequately meets their needs. These special needs groups are identified by HCD and include large families, seniors, female-headed households, persons with disabilities, extremely low-income households, farm workers, and persons experiencing homelessness. Section 3 provides an in-depth analysis of potential constraints to the development of housing, particularly affordable housing. It also provides an analysis of resources available to the community and analysis of fair housing trends and practices. Housing constraints are divided up into 3 categories. The first is governmental constraints, which may include land use controls, permitting and review procedures, and development requirements. This analysis identifies whether the city's zoning ordinance may hinder certain types of developments and if it complies with housing state law. If a constraint is identified or if zoning does not meet state requirements, a policy program is then added to the housing plan. The second type of constraint is non-governmental, which are conditions out of the city's control that may affect either the development or accessibility of affordable housing to the community. This may include the cost of land and construction, housing supply and market interest, as well as financial trends. The third type is environmental and infrastructure constraints. For example, flood risks and very high fire hazard severity zones may create hazards that need to be identified to avoid additional constraints for future housing development. Additionally, sites identified in this housing element must have access to infrastructure such as sewer and stormwater, which we analyze through this constraint section. And then lastly is the affirmatively furthering fair housing analysis, otherwise known as AFFH, which assesses capacity for inclusive and equitable outreach. It reviews trends and resources available in the city in comparison to the location of candidate sites, and it identifies factors that may contribute to fair housing issues. The housing plan is the most important part of the document as it establishes the goals, policies, and programs to address any potential constraints and fair housing issues, as well as establishes the actions the city will take to meet its 2023 to 2031 RENA. These policies and programs are divided up into 4 main goals, including housing, affordability, equitable distribution of affordable housing, and housing opportunity. Following HCD's review, 6 new policy programs have been added as listed on the screen in front of you. The first is Action H.20, which establishes by right development of candidate sites that have also been identified in the 4th and 5th cycle. This means that proposed residential projects with at least 20% affordable units that comply with the city's standards may be approved ministerially. Action H.4K requires an update to emergency shelter standards to reduce parking requirements. Action H.4L establishes by right permanent supportive housing in zones where multifamily and mixed uses are permitted. Action H.4M is added to amend the reasonable accommodations finding requirements to remove subjective language. This will be done as part of the ongoing zoning code updates. Action H.4N will also update the city's definition of family through the zoning code update to remove potential limitations to who is considered a family. And then lastly, Action H.40 will remove CUP requirements for larger residential care facilities, also through the zoning code updates, to remove constraints for special housing needs groups. In addition to the 4 main sections are 4 subsequent appendices. Appendix A provides a review of the city's program accomplishments throughout the entire 5th cycle to identify whether programs should be continued or modified for the 6th cycle. This is based on the annual progress reports reported to the state each year to provide progress on individual programs and towards meeting the RENA. Appendix B outlines how the city plans on accommodating its RENA of 1,522 units and identifies exact parcels with the capacity to accommodate new housing units over the next 8 years. Appendix C details all the outreach conducted as part of this housing element update process, and Appendix D provides a glossary of housing terms. So as mentioned, the city must plan to accommodate a total of 1,522 units over the next 8 years through 2031. The table here shows that the city is able to accommodate that total with a buffer through its current zoning, meaning no rezonings are necessary. Residential projects currently in the city's review pipeline are able to accommodate the full above moderate income RENA. The city can also count on projected ADU development based on the city's average since 2019, and this results in an estimated addition of 112 units. To address the remaining moderate and lower income RENA need, the city can rely on planned residential capacity within the PA1 specific plan, as well as vacant residentially zoned land. Through these 4 strategies, the city is able to meet its RENA with added buffers in each income category to avoid potential future rezones if development does not occur as planned. So since council last saw the draft, a few changes have been made to the adequate sites analysis. These include a change from 15 to 14 projected ADUs annually. This is due to a lower yearly average as a result of the final 2022 ADU figures. The realistic capacity for mixed-use zones has also been lowered from 100% to 75% following HCD guidance due to required commercial use components. And lastly, the PA1 site and acreage has been updated to reflect the October 2022 adopted specific plan update. So as you see here, these changes have resulted in an overall decrease in potential units across all income categories, with the largest change being in the very low and low income categories. While the units and buffers have decreased, the reasoning and development trends included in Appendix B show that these are viable site options that correspond with how development has occurred in Brentwood over time. In sum, the city is now left with a 9% buffer for lower income, a 36% buffer for moderate income, and a 224% buffer for above moderate income. Staff recommends that the City Council review, consider, and approve an amendment to the general plan to update the housing element for the 2023 to 2031 planning period in compliance with state law. We are now available for questions. Thank you for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you. Are there clarifying questions of staff regarding this item at this time? Okay, seeing none. If there are no further questions, I will now open the public hearing and turn it to you, Margaret.
If you're in person, please file a speaker card with the form provided at the counter at the back of the chambers. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. We did receive one public comment on this item prior to the meeting from Hanson Bridgen on behalf of Discovery Builders. And I have no speaker cards in person, and I do have one hand raised in Zoom. And I'll call on Carolina. Oops. Turn that on. Carolina, go ahead.
Thank you. It's just a question. She used the word ministerially, and I looked it up because I wasn't sure how it related to what the topic was. And I still don't understand how a decision is made ministerially. Who's making the decision? I'm sure I'm not the only person with this question who is listening to this. So if the person could clarify, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised and no speaker cards.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask staff to clarify, if I could get a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, we have a first.
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. So now if I could have council or staff to clarify what that might mean in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe she's referring to the program related to the 4th and 5th cycle sites and being required, if they were included and met the government code requirements, to be approved ministerially. What that means is that the sites would be compared against our objective design standards that we will be adopting shortly. And if they meet those objective design standards, those sites would then administratively need to be approved. That could be done through the design review process. It does not necessarily mean it has to be done at a staff level. It could be through the design review process, but it is a little bit more streamlined in that you can only compare the project against the objective design standards that are established by the city.
Can I say something real quick in layman's terms?
Sure.
It means that you, the public, get no say. You will never get a planning commission hearing. You will never get a city council hearing. They just get approved, correct?
They get compared against our objective design standards, and if they do meet all objective design standards, then per the guidance and state law, it would be.
So
would
it
be
takes
approved.
away people's rights to have a voice in what happens in their communities if it goes through all the design standards.
Katie, you.
Ms. Morris and I have dueling microphones over here. So just to clarify, some ministerial applications may still require a public hearing at which we would take public comment, but no discretion could be applied by the decision maker. It would have to be compared only to the objective criteria. So you're right, no discretion could be applied in that situation, but we may still have a public hearing.
So does that mean it comes to planning or us, and we're just going to listen to it and we have to approve it? We can't deny it.
So whoever the decision maker is will have to look at the application and determine whether or not it satisfies the objective criteria and not exercise individual judgment as to more subjective criteria. That's right.
So if a community member came and said, I want more trees, or I want a bigger setback, that's not something we would be able to do because we have design standards that are very specific, correct?
It is correct that we could not impose ad hoc or immediate new conditions or criteria for projects to be considered against. That's correct.
Yeah, I just want the public to understand like where they can no longer step in because of these rules.
Okay, Alexis, did you have any further clarification or comment?
I was going to say basically what Katie said about there could be a planning commission hearing involved in design review. I think what's important for, and it's not on the agenda tonight, but when we do come up with our objective design standards, there will be a public participation in that process so we can develop objective standards with feedback and input at that time. And I think that's really important for the public to participate in that process.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion on the item, at this time, I'll take a motion on the item.
Just one discussion point. I don't think any of us want to do this. I don't think, I know for sure two, I don't know the opinion of the other two, but we signed a letter, in opposition of this. We've signed letters supporting opposition of this, like our neighborhood voices. And this is frustrating, and it does feel like I'm letting down residents, and it sucks. It really does.
And I want to mention, I had a lot of questions prepared for this that were more for the sake of education, and there really is no, I hate to say no point, because there isn't really much we can say or do at this point. We have to follow state law. We have to adopt this for the most part to make sure that we're complying with HCD. So yes, it is very frustrating, but please know that we're doing our best to fight for everything we can for the city and for its best quality of life we can do.
I did have something I would like some clarification on just for the community. We use the term builder's remedy, and if you could explain what that means, I would appreciate that.
This might be a good point for outside counsel Barb Couts to explain what the builder's remedy is and isn't. There she is.
Hi, thanks very much, Mayor and council members. I'm Barb Couts. I'm outside counsel to the city on the housing element issues. Let's see, in the Housing Accountability Act, there's some special rules that apply to projects that have at least 20% lower income housing. So a project using the builder's remedy would have to have at least 20% of the total units in the project as affordable to lower income. If the project has 20% affordable, then in order to deny the project, the city would have to make one of 5 findings. The 5 findings, 4 of the 5 findings are quite difficult to make. One has to do with the city having, built everything required by its regional housing needs assessment. At this point in the process, nobody has done that. A second finding is that something in the project violates state or federal law. A third finding is that there's a specific adverse impact on health and safety that can't be mitigated based on an adopted standard. The fourth finding is if there's inadequate water or sewer, or the project's in an agricultural area. So those four findings are pretty difficult to make in most cases. The fifth finding, though, is a project can be a project with 20% affordable housing can be denied if it doesn't comply with both the land use element and the zoning. But a city is not allowed to make that finding if its housing element does not substantially comply with state law. So what people are calling the builder's remedy has to do with developers making applications for projects that don't comply with the city's general plan and zoning, and then arguing that the city's housing element does not comply with state law. And as a consequence, they're entitled, the city can't make that finding to deny their project. And they would also make the argument that there's no other grounds on which to deny the project. Now, these projects are not exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. So the city retains all of its ability to evaluate the project under CEQA, under the California Environmental Quality Act, and adopt mitigation measures, if appropriate. So it's not. Sometimes I've read in news articles that if somebody makes a builder's remedy application, it's the city has to turn around and it's implied that they have to approve it the next day, and that's not the case. The projects are still subject to CEQA. In addition, I understand that the city has only received preliminary applications. Those are not formal applications. They're an attempt to freeze the standards that were in effect when the preliminary applications were applied, in order to take advantage, you might want to say, of the preliminary application. The developer must make a real application in 180 days and complete it and get it complete within a limited time period as well. So anyway, that's what the builder's remedy is, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions if you have. And I apologize if this is a complicated explanation.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, as council is fully aware, and I know many in the community, these are complicated situations, but like has been said, if we pass this, we have the most protection as soon as possible, but we are very much being forced to do this by the state. This is not something that I know of any city that would like to capitulate to the requirements. I've made it really clear how I feel about losing local control in any amount, in any situation. I know our council has as well, different times, and it is very frustrating. So I will tell you that this council has made it clear abundantly many times by the way we vote and the things that we say and the efforts we make outside of these meetings to hold on to as much local control as we can for as long as we can. And I will continue to do that, and I believe the rest of our council will.
And I don't know if it's out of line to say that as a council, we've supported the Our Neighborhood Voices, which is a ballot initiative, which is we want to get it on the ballot for November 2024 to make land use and zoning decisions that of cities, not of the state. It's a big lift, and it is a David and Goliath exercise. If anyone wants to know more, let me know. More than happy to share the information.
And the website is?
OurNeighborhoodVoices.com.
I wanted to mention too that the council has collectively over the past couple of years pushed for inclusionary housing at a higher percentage than was done in the past. It's very important to us that we make sure that anyone that is of lower income can feel a part of the community in the way that best fits the community. And that's another thing that's kind of being taken away from us when it comes to the high density and builder's remedy, et cetera. So we're not denying that Brentwood needs to take care of its lower income residents and make sure that they have affordable and safe places to live. We're just not thrilled about having to force other houses down everyone's throats when clearly we've got issues around infrastructure and traffic and school impacting and all of those issues as well. Thanks.
I think it's pretty simple and easy to say that nobody really likes to be told what to do. My kids don't like it, the council doesn't like it, and neither do our citizens. But we all have to understand that we can protest, we can scream and yell, and we can tell everybody how much we hate it, or we can not vote for it and then put up with the builder's remedy and everything else that goes with it. Or we pass it and try and live the best we can with what we're being given. It's not nice and it's not fun, but that's where we're at right now.
I'll make the motion as much as I hate it because I know no one wants to do it. As detailed in the staff report, I move to approve an amendment to the general plan to update the housing element for the 6th cycle and repeal the 5th cycle housing element.
First and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We'll move on to item C2, an ordinance to amend the Brentwood Municipal Code relating to back and side yard encroachments. I'll turn it to staff.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. If you could please share my screen for tonight. Tonight's application is a text amendment to Chapter 17.030 with our definitions and Chapter 17.660 for encroachments into required yards of the Brentwood Municipal Code to clarify regulations pertaining to accessory buildings and structures. The subject chapter was originally adopted in 1982 to serve 3 specific purposes. It was to provide usable private open space to fulfill needs for outdoor leisure and recreation, to preserve the intent of the zoning ordinance to provide light and air through the requirement and maintenance of certain yards and other spaces, and to assure that the conservation, protection, improvement, and appearance of individual properties, right-of-way, and neighborhoods of the entire city. Prior to 1987, there were no development standards for accessory structures. This application was previously brought before the Planning Commission in February and was recommended that the City Council adopt the changes brought before you tonight. Over the last few years, the city's community enrichment staff has seen a significant increase in complaints related to accessory buildings and structures that do not comply with the Brentwood Municipal Code, culminating in 94 complaints this past year. Community enrichment staff does not proactively address issues related to accessory buildings and structures, but rather responds to complaints once they are received. As currently written, the code is not easily understood by the public and could be improved by amendments to definitions for many of the terms. Further, it is not possible for an accessory building to be added to many properties and meet the required minimum setbacks due to increasingly smaller lot sizes being approved and more accessory dwelling units being constructed. The proposed amendments will better identify regulations in the sections of the attached accessory structures, accessory buildings, including detached garages, patio covers, and gazebos, as well as detached accessory structures, including landscape features such as arbors, trellises, and play structures. And lastly, in regards to fences and walls. The first section proposed to be amended is the attached accessory structure section. The proposed modifications to this section are minor and limited to clarifying that in no case shall a setback be less than 3 feet as measured from the closest projection. It also provides clarification on the allowable encroachments of balconies and decks. Changes to accessory buildings section include revisions that provide clarity on what is defined as an accessory building, a distinction between open versus enclosed accessory buildings, and modifying the required setbacks from adjacent property lines as well as a separation from other buildings on site. Staff is recommending that the minimum rear and side yard setbacks for an accessory building or shed be reduced to mirror the requirements of an accessory dwelling unit, which require a minimum 4-foot setback. The proposal also removes building separation requirements for the main home to open accessory structures and reduces the separation requirement for an enclosed or partially enclosed structures from 8 feet to 4 feet. Lastly, this section provides new guidance and a definition for shipping containers. The next section is the detached accessory structure section. The proposed revisions within this section provide clarity on what is defined as an accessory structure, specifically clarifying the description of a landscape feature. Proposed revisions provide clarity on arbors and trellises, sunshade sails, and other features not to exceed 8 feet in height, and add guidelines for play structures, sports courts, batting cages, trampolines, and other similar features. Finally, this section provides clarity and clarifying guidelines on swimming pools and spas, separating in-ground and above-ground requirements. Next is fences and walls. The proposed updates to this section create a new section specifically for fences and walls that were previously combined under the accessory structure section. This new section provides additional guidelines on fences within residential zones, allowing for height of fence to be increased from a maximum of 6 feet to 7 feet outside of the front yard setback. This section also provides revised corner clearance guidance to be consistent with the city's adopted standard plans and specification guidelines. And lastly, it provides a list of prohibited fence types within residential zones. The last cleanup section is within our definitions. Staff is recommending that definitions be amended to include new definitions and add clarity for arbors and trellises, open accessory and enclosed, including enclosed and open definitions, portable sheds, razor and concertina wire, shipping container, as well as sun and shade sails. So in conclusion, as proposed, the text amendment will provide greater clarity and flexibility to residents when improving their properties, which in turn will help to improve property values throughout the city. In addition, the amendment will provide greater clarity to community enrichment staff to mitigate and abate improperly constructed and/or maintained accessory structures and buildings throughout the city. With that, staff is recommending that the City Council waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance approving a zoning text amendment to Chapter 17.030 and Chapter 17.660 of the Brentwood Municipal Code. And that concludes staff's presentation. Planning staff as well as community enrichment staff is available for questions.
Are there any clarifying questions of staff at this time? Okay. Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing. And Margaret, I'll turn it to you.
If you're in person, please file a speaker card. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And we received no public comments on this item prior to the meeting. And I have one hand raised in Zoom and no speaker cards. I'll go ahead and call on Carolina Villaseca. Carolina, go ahead.
Thank you. My question has to do with assuming this passes and City Council votes it through. Afterwards, how will this be communicated to homeowners? Because that was a whole lot of information that you guys presented, and I'm glad this is getting clarified. So people will need to know this information so that they don't, for example, build a gazebo and then have to tear it down, because that makes people infuriated because it wasn't within the right depth from the fence, et cetera, et cetera. So will this be available in utility bills in various languages? The distribution of information is what I'm looking to find out. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised.
Okay, at this time, we will close public comment, and I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
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 It is unanimous. And if we could have staff answer Ms. Villaseca's question, that'd be great.
Yes, great question. We definitely have to get the word out so all the residents know what to expect and how to comply. We have community enrichment that will often put a flyer together and put on the website, but also some additional outreach as we get questions. We also have a monthly newsletter, and if you are not currently subscribed to that, please give us an email and we will make sure you're on that distribution list. And that can be content for our very next edition and start educating the community about these new rules and definitions that come with this ordinance.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, do I have a motion?
I just want to say, our community enrichment staff sometimes gets some not so nice comments because of the hard work they have to do. So I just want to say, if you have anything to say to them, you can come and talk to us, city council or staff, about amendments, because they're just doing their job. So they're not there to make your life impossible. They're just following what is in our code. So if you're not happy, please don't take it on them, because I do hear of stories. And come talk to us and we can bring it to a forward agenda item or talk to staff. And that's it. So thank you for all the work you guys do from community enrichment.
I had a question from a resident who asked about on page number 5, letter G, shipping containers, and the definition in chapter 17.030 talks about pods. They were concerned, did this affect the moving pods that they put in front of their house? Because G talks about it being in conjunction with a construction project. And they said, well, if we're not constructing, can we have a pod in our driveway to move out of? So.
Yeah, so we did address that. I think it's on page 246 in the packet under the shipping container section. It does prohibit shipping containers in residential zones. However, they may be allowed temporarily to be placed on the driveway or within the public right-of-way with an encroachment permit for a maximum of 14 days per calendar year. So if you are moving, you are allowed to get a pod to be placed in your driveway for up to 14 days in order to allow you to move it in and have it moved out.
But it
Otherwise-
does.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
It doesn't
just
have to
saying.
be in conjunction with a construction project. That's just another or.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
And if I could clarify, that's packet page 829.
Oh.
So I have another question regarding that. If someone has some unforeseen circumstances, they have a pod, it's loaded, something happens and it's more than 14 days, do they have a remedy for that through this process?
The way it's written, no. Right now, it's 14 days per calendar year. That does not mean we could not include language for an exception as determined by community development director, for example, under extraordinary circumstances or things out of a subject's control, but that language isn't in there in letter G currently.
I would like to add language so that our staff on an individual, in case of an emergency, this is clearly something that would be aberrant to what normally would be expected. But we live in a world that has floods and things that we're dealing with now. And I can only imagine that at some point there may be a situation that the ability to find some relief from our staff would be helpful.
I think we could add at the end of letter G, can you share your screen, Jennifer, so they can see the exact wording? So at the end of letter G, we could probably add comma or for an alternate time period as determined by the community development director. And I'm looking at Katie to see if that.
Up to maybe 30 days. That way it's
I
not
think
too
that
flexible.
makes their job hard, right? If we go back to them she's saying, that makes it difficult for you because I did it for Bobby, but I'm not doing it for Susie. And they think their circumstances are similar, but now you're putting it back on her lap. So maybe a max of 30 days with some kind of fee or something, like, because if it's worth it for you to keep it for 30 days, then like I had to do with mine, like you can pay a fee or a fine.
I want it to be as easy on staff as possible. Yeah. Thank you, Robbie, for all the awesome work that you and your staff do. You are so awesome.
She is.
And I really don't want to make more work or more difficult, but there may be some very rare situations where really they're held hostage by circumstances out of their control. But any limitations staff feels is appropriate, that would be great.
Could we pass this as it is and then send staff to work on an amendment with Robbie that she feels will not put her in a pickle?
At their discretion, or would it need to come back?
Well, I think the amendment would come back maybe just on consent after they work out some language that would make it easy for the people who have to execute.
I think that sounds fair.
I don't want this to delay the passage or the process. Yes, Katie?
So just so we're all clear on process here, since this is an amendment to Title 17, which is the zoning ordinance, any future amendment would have to go back to Planning Commission and then come back to council for a first and second reading. That being said, I'm sure staff would appreciate the opportunity to weigh some language that is actually effectual in the field and doesn't cause staff any further heartache when it comes to determining which applicants would be eligible for this exception. So if you are inclined to pass this tonight, staff can start working right away internally on some modification to bring back at a later date, perhaps coupled with some of the existing zoning ordinance changes that you'll be considering in the future. But I'm looking at Ms. Morris for that direction.
So that would delay the implementation of this ordinance a bit, right? So we would have to be coming back at a future date, and we already have several other ordinances that we're bringing to council in April, also to help community enrichment with their workload. So just to your point, that would push this off a little farther if we did make a significant amendment tonight that had to be brought back to Planning Commission and Council. I think if we had maybe a couple minutes to pause and discuss it with Robbie, we could probably come up with some language right now, if that works for council.
So I'm very happy if council is okay to give the time. And if there isn't a reasonable workaround, then I will withdraw the comment and figure out some way to deal with this in the future.
May I ask Ms. Morris, how much time do you think you would need? I'm happy to pass it, especially since I guess the issue was the pod company just wouldn't pick it up and they couldn't move a huge container.
How much time would we need right now?
Yes.
I think 5 minutes, we could come up with some language that would be sufficient.
Okay, well, we can take 5 minutes. Yes.
And while we're considering maybe some recommendations policy-wise for you now, another option too is to go ahead and adopt it as is and let it finish out this normal process. We'll come back with a second reading on the next council meeting. And then in the background, during the next month or two or three, we can start the process anew with that change too. So that's another option. That way you don't hold up the authority now to start implementing this right away while we work on a better version that with those details. So it's just another option as well.
But would the 5 minutes actually take care of that? I mean, could we get this done in 5 minutes? Then it feels like that would be a good option, like the recess.
I just don't want to rush anything that then we're going to have to adjust.
I don't either, but it sounds like they feel pretty confident. I mean, if it takes 10 minutes, we can take a 10-minute recess.
Well,
I'd be okay with that.
Well, I have had the privilege of observing Robbie and her staff do amazing things in our community, so I have confidence. And really, if it's something that does need to return, then we'll take our city manager's recommendation. So we will recess for 5 minutes, and thank you, staff, for indulging this question.
I'm sorry. No. Make a kerfuffle.
I know that we have families that, like a family member, they're in the middle of this, and a family member has a medical emergency, and now they're stuck.
Jennifer, just give us a shout when you're ready.
Ready?
This time we will reconvene our city council meeting. And staff, do we have a recommendation?
First of all, thank you for that extra time to help make this work a little more efficiently. So we've consulted and have come up with some draft language for you that will give us the flexibility that the residents may best benefit from, with some discretion as well. So we propose the additional insertion here you'll see of a maximum of 30 days with the written approval of the Community Development Director. So if we start to integrate fees, that really complicates things and have to do nexus studies and all those other kind of things. But we figured based on existing cases and knowledge that we have in the industry that 30 days would capture most emergency situations. Everything else should be covered under the construction permit, and they've got as much time as they need for construction-related issues.
Wonderful.
Anything to add, Alexis, Jennifer, Robbie?
Thank you so much, Robbie and Alexis and all of staff for getting together with this. It's there was recently a friend of mine in town that they were doing some things and they had a medical emergency in the home, and they were kind of held hostage by the emergency. And so there were some situations that I could just foresee some concerns. So thank you for this. I really appreciate it. So with this change, do we have a motion on this item?
As detailed in the staff report, I move to waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance to modify the municipal code as it relates to the encroachments into required yards and adds definitions, including the amendment to item G.
I second that motion.
Okay, Margaret?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brentwood approving a zoning text amendment, RZ 23-002, which would amend Chapter 17.030 definitions and Chapter 17.660 encroachments into required yards of the Brentwood Municipal Code.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We will move into item D1, business items. Consider naming a new liaison to the John Marsh Historic Trust if necessary. I'll turn to staff.
I'll give a little introduction, and if Vice Mayor Meyer has any additional comments to add. We have had an appointment process that was made back in January, and a liaison appointment made with Vice Mayor Meyer to the John Marsh Historic Trust. And based on their scheduling of the third Friday of every month at 10 a.m., it's not going to work for Vice Mayor Meyer, and maybe she can provide some more insight. But we're asking you for direction tonight if you'd like to appoint another member of the council to that committee as a liaison. And if you don't, then we just wouldn't have any representation formally, but we would still continue to partner with them in appropriate ways.
I don't have a lot to add. I can just say that I only went to one meeting because that one was rescheduled and actually did fit with my schedule. It's just a matter of conflict. I was actually very honored and excited to be a part of it and to learn more about the trust and the work they're doing and support it, but it just isn't something that I can do. So.
Are there any clarifying questions of staff regarding this? Okay, so at this time, we will open public comment. Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council. If you're in person, please file a speaker card. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I received no written public comments on this item. And I do have one hand raised. I'll call on Carolina. Carolina, go ahead.
Yeah, just as I don't know if this is possible, but could you take applications from residents who might want to serve as a representative of the city of Brentwood on that committee? Just a thought. Thanks.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised and no speaker cards.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll close public comments, move into council discussion. And I'm not sure how exactly that process would work regarding Carolina's question.
I'll make the first attempt. It's not a city committee, which you'd have a lot more discretion over and could make your own appointment process for. That could certainly be a question we could ask the nonprofit and see how they'd like to fill that liaison. they want the city council to do a citizen recruitment process and recommend somebody to them, we could certainly ask them if that's what they'd like. And I don't know, Vice Mayor, if you have any insights on what you think they'd like there.
I, again, only attended one meeting, so I really don't have any idea what they would think about this.
Okay.
And just to weigh in for one moment tonight, you have agendized a council liaison. So I'm afraid that would be beyond the scope of tonight's agenda topic. If you wanted to consider that at a later meeting, you could request that it be agendized for future consideration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have any council members that would like to step in as liaison for this? And if not,
I would love to, but I already have 5, so I can't. You have 13, so I don't think you can either. But, you know, Tony, I think you have 3, and Patanisha has 2. So maybe if it fits your schedules, I don't know.
I can mention that the one I did attend was both virtual and in person, and I think they are planning to continue that, if that helps anybody decide.
I often have to attend court on those days, so I'm not able to do it at that time.
I'd be more than happy to step in if it helped. It's definitely fit in my schedule. Being the retired guy, I can make it work. Yes.
okay, having formerly been the liaison years ago, the meetings are not frequent. And the scheduled meetings were often rescheduled. So I don't imagine it would be a huge time restraint for you. But if you're interested, do we have a motion to?
As detailed in the staff report, I move to appoint Tony Orlemans as the city's liaison to the John Marsh Historic Trust Board.
Okay, I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Councilman Orlemans. You now have another meeting to assist our residents and nonprofits with our community. So thank you. Are there any, we'll move into item E1. Are there any new future agenda requests at this time?
I have one. This is a future, doesn't need to come back anytime soon, but when we bring back the Brentwood specific plan, I'd like to take a look at the Healthy Places Index for it, the scoring, and find out how we can improve that. And I want to also, in bringing it forward, connect to the idea of prevention of gentrification and displacement. Consider eviction moratoriums. This is all coming from reading the housing element and looking at some of the things that are going on in that section and what we could do to improve things for residents there. I know we have, bigger cities have housing authorities and we do not, but I think that there could be some things that we can do that would help residents there feel a little bit more secure in their homes and less vulnerable to gentrification and displacement specifically. Is that enough, or do we need more information?
We typically put it in one sentence. So if I have it right, it would be something along when we come back to look at the Brentwood specific plan, look at some strategies related to improving our healthy place index.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if it would work better for another policy, another future agenda item would be gentrification mitigation type policies as outlined in the housing element. Does that sound like it matches what you're
That does
envisioning?
sound good. I know we've got the current adopted policies were on page 392. They were showing what we already have in place and what we do not and what some other options are. So including some of that, maybe looking at what other cities are doing as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Council member, I'm trying to take your recommendation, Pearson.
Thank you. You know, we had a public comment, specifically something stood out so profound to me was Mr. Dorman's public comment about the mailboxes. So I would like to request that staff can, and you know, our senior population is important, making sure they have access to it. And I know this may be an issue between the U.S. Postal Service, but I would like to see if our staff can investigate from a city level what we can do to provide some type of access or resources for those residents to access their mail in a different way until the clubhouse is built to provide the mailboxes there.
And I don't know if it's appropriate to say, I've been having an ongoing conversation about the exact same thing. So if that means two of us can bring it forward, I certainly, Tim, you already know how I feel about this. We've been having emails back and forth about it. So I would certainly second that and bring it back.
Yep. We'll add that as a future agenda item. See what other things can be done to expedite getting mailboxes to that community.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question about the future agenda item? Like, I know you're already working on stuff behind the scenes. If you resolve it before the next meeting, does it still need to come back?
If Katie will allow me to elaborate a little bit, we have reached out to the developer, and I don't think we've reached out yet to the post office directly, but we can certainly do that. That falls within our operational issues to try to help solve problems for residents. It is an issue between the federal government and the developer, though. The city doesn't have any leverage or development conditions of approval that we could hold over on the developer, et cetera. But the developer has said within 60 days they should have it resolved. But we'll certainly look and see if there's anything else to make it happen quicker.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further future agenda item requests, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And you're out for another 15 minutes until 9 o'clock.